The estate glittered under a canopy of lights, each chandelier scattering shards of brilliance across the polished marble floors. Outside, the winter wind howled, but inside, warmth and laughter wrapped every guest like a velvet curtain. Servants in crisp black uniforms floated among the crowd, balancing trays of champagne and canapes, while a string quartet played just loud enough to be heard above polite chatter. In the center of it all was Ethan Ward, impeccably dressed, a man whose presence seemed to command the room without effort. Guests were drawn to him like moths to flame. Corporate associates, old friends, and a few enigmatic strangers whose arrival seemed almost orchestrated. His smile was flawless, but beneath it there was an edge, a restlessness that caught the attention of only a few perceptive eyes. "Ethan, darling, you simply must try the truffle canapes," a wealthy socialite whispered, tugging at his arm with a practiced flirtation. He laughed, the sound smooth and confident, but glanced briefly at his phone before sliding it back into his pocket. A text notification blinked and vanished in a single moment. "Be careful, they're watching." Most guests would have ignored such a warning, dismissing it as a prank or a paranoia, but Detective Lena Morales, attending the party as a friend of one of the estate's regular patrons, felt her pulse quicken. She had an instinct honed by years on the force, a sense for danger that the affluent and distracted rarely possessed. Something was off tonight. The party seemed normal at first glance. Glasses clinked, laughter bounced off the walls. A few of the younger attendees crowded around the bar, their faces lit by neon cocktails, exchanging gossip and subtle jabs. Yet under the glamour, whispers traveled like shadows. "Did you hear about the deal he almost signed last week?" someone murmured. "He's upset a lot of powerful people." Another voice countered, more guarded. "I wouldn't say that aloud if I were you." Ethan moved through the room, greeting people with charm that masked an alertness. He laughed at a joke, nodded politely at a compliment, and offered a brief reassuring smile to the staff. Yet his eyes constantly scanned the crowd, and more than once they flicked toward the back exit where heavy velvet curtains hid a service hallway leading outside. Morales noticed the subtle tension, the way some guests shifted uncomfortably, avoided eye contact, or whispered into their phones with a quiet urgency. As the clock approached 10, the host, a silver-haired magnate named Victor Holloway, called for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, a toast to friendship, prosperity, and the brilliance of our dear Ethan Ward." Glasses rose, champagne sparkling like captured starlight. Ethan stepped forward, raising his own glass. He smiled, nodded, and prepared a short speech about ambition, innovation, and the human capacity to shape the future. For most, it was charming and inspiring, but Morales noticed something subtle. The way Ethan's hand trembled ever so slightly, the shadow in his eyes that hinted at urgency rather than celebration. Then it happened. Mid-toast, as Ethan lifted his glass to sip, a loud crash echoed through the hall. A tray of champagne glasses toppled over, spilling golden liquid across the marble. A scream pierced the festive hum. Guests turned, startled, chairs scraped back, and in that instant, Ethan was gone. No one saw him move. One moment, he was standing there, confident and radiant. The next, nothing. Just an empty space where he had been, the glass still suspended in midair, glittering with champagne droplets. Panic erupted. "Where is he?" someone shouted. "Did he step outside?" Security rushed forward, but the back exit was empty. Windows were locked. Cameras that should have captured the moment showed only static, or worse, had mysteriously blanked. Guests whispered, fear mingled with confusion. Some murmured about a prank, others suspected a fainting spell, but Morales felt the weight of certainty settle in her chest. This was no accident. Ethan had not simply wandered off, he had vanished. She moved quickly through the crowd, observing, questioning, scanning. Her training told her where to look. The people who were too calm, the ones who seemed almost too eager to help, the ones glancing toward the exits or the staff areas with an intensity that seemed rehearsed. A maid, her hands trembling as she held a tray of untouched hors d'oeuvres, finally spoke. I think I saw someone, a shadow, near the service door, just before he disappeared." Her eyes darted toward a corner of the room, but Morales noted the inconsistencies. The shadow she described did not match any of the known staff or the visible guests. Ethan's phone buzzed on the table where he had left it. Morales picked it up carefully, glancing at the screen. One new message. "The game has begun. Trust no one." Her pulse quickened. Whoever had taken Ethan was skilled, and they had anticipated the party's chaos. It wasn't just a disappearance, it was a calculated move. Someone had orchestrated the perfect environment to remove him from sight, using the glittering party as a smokescreen. As Morales continued questioning guests, a few patterns emerged. Julian Crest, a rival businessman known for his ruthless tactics, had been unaccounted for during the disappearance. Several partygoers mentioned seeing him slip away briefly, though none could confirm where he had gone. Others hinted at quiet arguments Ethan had with unknown visitors earlier in the evening, conversations filled with tension that now seemed ominous in retrospect. Morales's instinct screamed that the night was far from over. Someone powerful was behind this, and Ethan's life, or at least his reputation, fortune, and secrets were at stake. And then, just as she thought she was piecing together the first threads, the house phone rang. Morales answered, only to hear a distorted, metallic voice. "Detective Morales, he's watching. He can't be saved unless you follow the trail, but beware, not everyone in that room is who they seem." The line went dead. Guests crowded around, still in shock, murmuring, speculating. Morales looked around the room, noting faces lit by fear, faces that now seemed masks hiding true intentions. She realized, with a sinking certainty, that this was no ordinary case. Every smile, every toast, every polite nod could hide a lie, a betrayal, or a threat. Ethan's disappearance had transformed the party into a crime scene, and Morales, though present as a guest, now found herself at the center of a dangerous game she hadn't anticipated. Every shadow, every whispered word, every subtle glance could be a clue or a trap. As the clock struck 10:30, the grand hall felt smaller, suffocating. Morales knew the first hours were critical. Whoever had taken Ethan would move fast, cover tracks meticulously, and strike again if necessary. The rest of the guests, oblivious to the full scope, continued murmuring, taking comfort in champagne and conversation. But Morales's gaze stayed sharp, calculating, and unyielding. She had a job to do, and she wouldn't fail. Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the estate's tall windows. Somewhere beyond the sparkling lights and laughter, Ethan Ward waited. And somewhere else, the person who orchestrated his disappearance watched, calculating the next move. The game had begun.
Detective Lena Morales left the glittering chaos of the party behind and stepped into the cold night. The estate loomed like a silent sentinel, its walls filled with secrets that no polite conversation could conceal. The text messages, the cryptic phone call, the maid's shadowy description, they all coalesced in her mind, forming a web that hinted at far more than a simple disappearance. Back at her small, unassuming office in the city, Morales spread out the few clues she had managed to collect. Guest lists, photographs of the party, the sequence of text messages on Ethan's phone, and security logs that had suspiciously vanished from the estate's system. Each one carried a subtle anomaly, a timestamp off by a minute, a blank frame in a video feed, a number that didn't match the guest registry. Someone had planned this meticulously. The first person she interviewed was Victor Halloway, the host. He was a picture of controlled panic, dabbing at a sweat-stained brow as he recounted the night. "I don't understand it, Detective. One moment he was here, raising his glass, and the next, he just disappeared. Security checked the exits. Nothing. I've never seen anything like it in my life." Morales leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "Victor, were there any new faces tonight? Anyone who might have had access to private areas?" Victor hesitated. "There were a few people I didn't recognize. I assumed they were business associates. But yes, there was one man, dressed all in black, who lingered near the service hallway. He slipped away quickly, and I didn't think much of it at the time." A shadow. That aligned with the maid's account. Morales filed the information away. Whoever had orchestrated this knew how to blend in, how to become invisible amid the distractions of wealth and glamour. Her next target was Julian Crest, Ethan's business rival. Julian was a man whose ambitions were notorious, whose charm often masked ruthless intent. Morales had already noted his unaccounted-for movements during the key moments of the party. He found him in a private club downtown, drinking whiskey and smiling at the wrong moments. "Detective," he said with an easy grin, leaning back in a leather chair, "I suppose you think I had something to do with Ward's disappearance." "I think you might know more than you're admitting. Where were you between 10 and 10:30 last night?" Julian's grin didn't waver. "Walking to the restroom, alone. I assume security footage or witnesses can confirm that." Morales filed the claim for now, sensing the tension behind the smile. Julian's movements were calculated, but something about him, his eagerness to downplay the night, reeked of guilt or opportunity. Meanwhile, Morales couldn't shake the nagging thought of the AI project Ethan had been developing. It wasn't public knowledge, but whispers among tech insiders suggested it was revolutionary. Financial records showed a sudden spike in investments, withdrawals, and off-the-books transfers. Someone wanted access, and someone wanted him silenced. Her investigation took her next to Clara, Ethan's assistant. Clara was efficient, poised, and appeared loyal, yet Morales sensed her nervous energy. "Detective, I don't know what happened," Clara said when questioned in Ethan's empty office. "I left to get some files, and when I returned, he was gone. I swear, I didn't." Her voice faltered, and Morales noticed subtle signs, a fidgeting hand, a fleeting glance toward the window. "Clara," she said gently, "is there something you're not telling me? Did Ethan confide in you about threats, anyone who might want to harm him?" Clara hesitated before whispering, almost too softly to catch. There were meetings he wouldn't tell anyone about, deals he called high risk. He said people were watching, even among us. Morales nodded. That confirmed her suspicions. The danger was internal as much as external. Someone close to Ethan facilitated access, whether willingly or under pressure. The trail led her back to the estate. Under the cover of night, Morales inspected the service corridors and staff areas, retracing Ethan's last known movements. The air was still, the estate silent except for the creak of floorboards beneath her careful steps. In a forgotten storage room, she discovered a discarded security card stamped with Ethan's ID, bent and scratched. It had been dropped or left deliberately. She studied it carefully. Whoever left it behind wanted it to be found. A taunt, a clue. Morales had learned early in her career that the boldness of criminals often revealed arrogance as well as opportunity. Hours passed as she continued piecing the puzzle together, and then a breakthrough. An encrypted file recovered from Ethan's laptop, hidden in plain sight under a folder labeled "Confidential, Do Not Open." It contained a series of maps, schedules, and coded instructions, clearly left as breadcrumbs by Ethan himself. Whoever had kidnapped him underestimated him. He was already planning his countermoves. Her eyes narrowed as she deciphered the first layer. The file pointed to a location outside the city, an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district. Morales knew the danger. If the captors realized Ethan had left clues, they could eliminate him or her before she even arrived. She called for backup, but only discreetly, fearing that anyone who knew could be compromised. Meanwhile, whispers about Ethan's disappearance began circulating online. Social media buzzed with speculation. Kidnapped or hiding? Celebrity tech mogul vanishes mid-party. Journalists began digging, some inadvertently threatening to alert the wrong people. Morales realized she had to act quickly. Every hour that passed increased the risk not only to Ethan, but to the delicate web of secrets surrounding him. As she prepared to move on the warehouse lead, she felt a presence behind her. Morales spun, hand on her holster, but it was only a messenger, a young courier, looking nervous, holding an envelope. Inside was a note in Ethan's handwriting. "Detective Morales, they think I'm gone. I'm not. Follow the trail. Trust no one. The game has only begun." The words struck her like a cold wind. Ethan wasn't merely a victim, he was a player, setting the stage for a dangerous confrontation, and the person who orchestrated his disappearance underestimated his cunning. Her mind raced as she pieced together the next steps. She would need to navigate deceit, betrayal, and danger, all under the watchful eyes of a captor whose reach might extend further than anyone realized. Every clue, every shadow, and every whisper would matter. Morales understood one thing clearly. Ethan's disappearance was only the opening move in a game of ambition, greed, and calculated peril, and the next moves would be lethal. As dawn broke over the city, painting skyscrapers in shades of gold and gray, Morales set off towards the industrial district, knowing that with each passing moment, the stakes were climbing. The trail of shadows, lies, and cryptic messages promised confrontation and potentially the revelation of truths that would shock everyone involved. She was ready.
The abandoned warehouse on the edge of the industrial district was a hulking structure, its corrugated metal walls warped and rusted from years of neglect. Morales parked a block away, leaving her car in the shadows. The street was silent except for the occasional hum of a distant truck, and the cold wind rattled loose panels above, echoing like ghostly footsteps. She approached cautiously, every sense on high alert. The clues Ethan had left were precise, subtle markings on utility poles, a small smear of chalk near a drainage grate, a sequence of discarded receipts forming a breadcrumb trail. It was almost theatrical, the way Ethan had orchestrated his own breadcrumbs. Whoever had kidnapped him hadn't anticipated that he might leave hints for someone like Morales, a detective capable of seeing patterns in chaos. Morales checked the perimeter first. A chain-link fence surrounded the warehouse, but a section was bent, as if someone had deliberately created an entrance for her to find. Her instincts told her this wasn't just a trap, it was an invitation, a challenge. She moved silently through the gap, flashlight cutting a thin swath through the darkness. Inside, the warehouse smelled of rust, damp concrete, and oil. Piles of crates and old machinery created shadows that twisted like living things. Morales paused, listening. Somewhere in the distance, the faint scrape of metal against metal echoed, an echo that could have been anything. She pressed forward, noting subtle disturbances in the dust, footprints, slightly shifted crates, and a faint trail leading toward a side room partially hidden behind a stack of wooden pallets. She was halfway down the narrow aisle when movement caught her eye. A figure darted behind a crate. Morales' heart rate spiked. She drew her weapon, but her finger stayed lightly on the trigger. She didn't want to alert anyone prematurely. "Ethan?" she called, her voice firm yet cautious. No answer, just the echo of her own words bouncing off the walls. The trail led her to a small office tucked in the corner of the warehouse. The door was ajar, and inside, papers were scattered across the floor, maps, schedules, and envelopes marked with red ink. Morales bent to examine the papers. One envelope contained photographs of Ethan with various individuals, Julian Crest included, in meetings she hadn't yet connected. Another held a USB drive labeled "Trust No One." She pocketed the drive and continued deeper into the building. Then she heard it, a voice, soft but sharp. "You shouldn't have come alone." Morales spun toward the voice. Out of the shadows stepped Clara, Ethan's assistant. Her face was pale, eyes wide, and her hands trembling. "Clara?" Morales said cautiously. "You've been helping them, haven't you?" Clara swallowed hard. I didn't know who else to trust. I was following orders. I didn't think it would go this far." "Orders from whom?" Morales pressed. Her lips quivered. Julian Crest. He's the one who took Ethan. I only helped with access. I didn't know what he planned." The pieces began to click together. Julian had orchestrated the kidnapping to gain Ethan's AI project. Clara had unwittingly, or under duress, facilitated entry. Morales felt the weight of urgency. Ethan wasn't just a missing man. He was a prize in a high-stakes game, one that could destroy countless lives if mishandled. Clara led Morales to another part of the warehouse, a hidden stairwell descending into a basement. The air grew colder, the shadows longer, and the smell of damp concrete stronger. At the bottom she paused, whispering, "He's in there, but be careful." Morales edged forward, weapon drawn, as she pushed open the heavy door. Inside was a small, dimly lit room, and there, sitting calmly in a chair, was Ethan Ward, his hands bound, but his posture was relaxed, his eyes sharp. "Detective Morales," he said, his voice steady, almost teasing. "I knew you'd follow the trail." Morales lowered her weapon slightly, relief and confusion mingling in her chest. "Ethan, you're alive. I thought—" "I'm alive, yes, but I've been playing a game, one I hoped you'd understand. Julian underestimated me. He thought kidnapping me would be enough, but I've already turned the pieces against him." Ethan's calm demeanor belied the tension in the room. Morales surveyed him and then turned to Clara. "Explain." Clara nodded, swallowing her fear. "Ethan left these clues intentionally. He wanted someone he trusted to find him if anything went wrong. He knew Julian wouldn't expect a trail that looked like mistakes." Morales's mind raced. Ethan wasn't just a victim. He was orchestrating a counterattack from within his own captivity. The audacity of it left her both impressed and concerned. Suddenly, the basement door slammed. Morales spun, weapon raised. Julian Crest stood in the doorway, flanked by two burly associates. His smile was cold, calculating. "Well, well, Detective Morales, and here's our prize, Ethan Ward. You've been quite the slippery little fox, but every fox has a den, and every den can be stormed." Morales tensed, scanning the room for escape routes, but Ethan remained calm. He subtly shifted his position in the chair, drawing Julian's attention. "You've underestimated me, Julian, and you've underestimated the people who know me. Did you really think I wouldn't leave breadcrumbs? Did you really think Detective Morales wouldn't find me?" Julian laughed, a hollow, cold sound. "You think this ends here? Your little tricks won't save you." Before Julian could advance, Morales made her move. With precise timing, she fired a warning shot into the wall, sending sparks and dust flying. The noise startled the associates, giving Morales the split second she needed to dash toward the stairwell. Ethan, anticipating the distraction, leaned to one side, tripping the last associate with a swift kick. Chaos erupted. The narrow stairwell became a battlefield. Morales guided Ethan upward, their movements synchronized like a practiced team. Julian's shouts echoed behind them, mingling with the heavy footsteps and scattered crates toppling. Morales glanced over her shoulder just enough to see Clara, recovering her courage, press a button on a hidden panel that locked the basement door, buying them precious seconds.
Finally, they emerged outside the warehouse into the cold pre-dawn light. Morales breathed heavily, adrenaline surging. Ethan stood tall, his calm demeanor returning now that he was free. "Was this all part of your plan?" Morales asked, half in awe, half incredulous. Ethan smiled faintly. "Part of it. I anticipated Julian's moves, and I left a trail only someone with your skills could follow. The game isn't over, Detective, but we've leveled the playing field." Morales nodded, understanding the depth of the danger, the stakes, and the brilliance of Ethan's strategy. "Then let's make sure he never gets another move." As the sun began to rise over the city, bathing the streets in a soft golden glow, Morales, Ethan, and a cautiously renewed Clara disappeared into the network of alleys and streets, leaving the warehouse and Julian Crest trapped in a growing web of consequences. Some games were deadly, some people played to win, and tonight the opening moves had set the stage for a final confrontation that would shock everyone.
The city was just beginning to stir, the pale light of dawn creeping between skyscrapers and reflecting off wet streets. Detective Lena Morales moved swiftly with Ethan and Clara, each step measured, aware that Julian Crest would not remain idle for long. Every second counted. Julian's audacity and resources made him a dangerous adversary. One misstep could undo the careful strategy that had already brought Ethan back from the brink. They navigated through abandoned alleys and quiet side streets until they reached an inconspicuous car parked in the shadows. Ethan slid behind the wheel, the calm and collected air that had unnerved Julian the night before, now manifesting in every movement. "We need a safe location to regroup," he said. "Julian will be hunting for us, and he knows the city better than we do. But he doesn't know we've anticipated him." Morales raised an eyebrow. "You mean this is all part of the plan?" Ethan nodded. "Exactly. I didn't just leave breadcrumbs for you. I left a challenge for him, a trap, and you're the only one capable of executing it with me." They drove in silence, tension taut, every honking car and passing pedestrian amplified by the knowledge that Julian could strike at any moment. Morales kept her hand near her weapon, scanning rooftops, alleyways, and intersections. Clara, usually composed, fidgeted in the back seat, nervously clutching a folder containing sensitive files and proof of Julian's illegal dealings. Eventually, they reached the edge of the city, where an abandoned observatory perched on a hill overlooking the streets below. Rusted metal and cracked glass made the place appear as if it had been untouched for decades. But Ethan had chosen it deliberately. High ground, visibility, and isolation made it perfect for a confrontation where he could control the outcome. As they approached the observatory, Morales felt a growing sense of anticipation. The shadows of the buildings stretched long in the early morning light, and the silence was almost oppressive. "Are you sure this is the right place?" she asked. "Perfect," Ethan replied, eyes sharp. "He'll think I'm still vulnerable, that he has the upper hand, but the game is about to turn." No sooner had they entered than a shadow appeared in the doorway. Julian Crest stepped into the room, flanked by two of his most trusted enforcers. His grin was icy, calculated, the kind of smile that suggested absolute confidence. "Ethan Ward," Julian said smoothly, "I must admit, you're clever, too clever to be just a businessman, but cleverness won't save you now." Morales and Ethan exchanged a quick glance. Everything had led to this, every clue, every breadcrumb, every misstep orchestrated to lure Julian here. "I think you underestimated me," Ethan said calmly. "You assumed I'd panic, that I'd make mistakes, but I've already accounted for you, your men, and even your arrogance." Julian's grin faltered slightly. "Arrogance? You haven't seen anything yet."
The tension exploded as Julian signaled his men to advance. Morales moved instantly, pulling her firearm with precision, while Ethan subtly shifted, triggering a hidden mechanism in the floor. A section of tiles slid open, revealing a shallow trap that caught one of Julian's men off guard. Chaos erupted. Morales and Ethan moved in sync, incapacitating Julian's enforcers with a combination of strategy and sheer nerve. Julian, realizing the trap, tried to retreat, but Ethan anticipated his move, cutting him off. "It's over, Julian," he said, voice low but firm. Julian's eyes narrowed. "Over? You think this ends here? You think anyone can contain me?" Morales stepped forward, unwavering. "Yes, today it ends, Julian. You've underestimated how far people will go to protect what's theirs, and how far someone like Ethan can think ahead." Ethan added, "You relied on fear, greed, and betrayal, but you overlooked loyalty, courage, and intelligence. That's your mistake." Julian's defiance faltered as Morales handcuffed him, the sound sharp in the quiet observatory. For the first time, he looked uncertain. His carefully constructed empire of intimidation and deceit was unraveling. As the police arrived, summoned discreetly by Morales before the confrontation, Ethan revealed the final twist. The AI project he had been developing was never fully exposed to the public or competitors. The files he had left behind had been encrypted to reveal only false leads to Julian, while the true project remained secure under layers of protection only he controlled. Clara, initially fearful of her complicity, stepped forward. I can help secure the project. I can fix the breaches I made." Ethan nodded, understanding but firm. "This is bigger than all of us." Morales surveyed the scene. Julian Crest, handcuffed and furious, being led away by officers. Ethan, composed and victorious, yet visibly exhausted from the psychological game he had played. Clara, humbled but determined, and the observatory itself, silent now except for the distant hum of city life. "It's done," Morales said, finally allowing herself to exhale. "The threat is neutralized." Ethan nodded, a small, rare smile breaking his usually composed facade. "For now, but it's a reminder, in this world, trust is rare, loyalty is rarer, and danger often hides behind the most familiar faces." As the sun rose higher, illuminating the city below in golden light, Morales realized that this case had been more than a crime investigation. It had been a test, a game of strategy, courage, and intelligence, and while it had been won, the lessons would linger. Ethan turned to Morales, eyes sharp. "You didn't just save me, you played your part perfectly. Without you, none of this would have worked." Morales shrugged modestly. "I just followed the trail. You left it well enough that someone capable could see the pattern." He smiled faintly, a mix of relief and acknowledgement. "Then we've done it. But remember, in a world like ours, the next game begins before the first one ends." With that, Ethan walked away from the observatory, confident, guarded, and victorious. Morales watched him go, satisfied that justice had prevailed, but aware that the shadows of greed and ambition never truly disappeared. Clara lingered, looking at Morales with gratitude. "Thank you for not giving up." Morales nodded. "The work isn't over, but we've won today." As the police secured the scene and Julian Crest was taken into custody, Morales couldn't shake the lingering thrill of the case, the tension, the cleverness, the high stakes that had kept everyone on edge. And she knew deep down that this was a story the city wouldn't soon forget. The tech mogul who vanished from a party, the detective who followed the trail through shadows and lies, and the mastermind who had underestimated human cunning, courage, and intelligence. The city woke to a new day, blissfully unaware of the intricate, deadly game that had played out in its shadows.
But for those who had survived, who had fought and who had triumphed, there was a quiet satisfaction in knowing that even in a world of betrayal and greed, intelligence, courage, and loyalty could prevail. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of the city, the lesson lingered: never underestimate what a determined human can accomplish. The case was closed, that the story, the shock, and the revelation would echo far beyond the walls of that observatory, leaving everyone involved and everyone who would hear of it forever changed.